Hi, I just wanted to take a few minutes to address the differences between the 1998 impeachment of Bill Clinton and the 2019 impeachment of Donald Trump. It's really only happened twice before to presidents, so we only have two other cases to look at. The first is Andrew Johnson just after the Civil War, and it really has nothing to do with what's going on today, different circumstances, nothing really we can get out of it. 1998 is pretty close, and there actually was a trial in the Senate, articles of impeachment, and all that. So we can look at what happened there, what the law was argued to be there, and apply it to 2019. So I've done that, and kind of here's just real quickly the things that I've learned. Number one, for you millennials out there, Clinton was not impeached for having an affair with an intern. Article 1 charged him with lying to a grand jury and related charges. Article 2 charged him with attempting to obstruct justice. In other words, asking or trying to influence other people to lie, such as Monica Lewinsky. And this had to do with Monica Lewinsky and the Paula Jones civil lawsuit against Clinton, where she alleged that he had basically raped her. So if we look at what the Democrats' lawyers' arguments were to the House of Representatives in the Judiciary Committee, really that's helpful for Trump in 2019. So let's look at what the Democrats' position were in regards to defending Bill Clinton. Their lawyers said that of all the federal prosecutors that came in and spoke to us in the House of Representatives, none of them said that this would be a real case in a real court. So if lawyers can conclude that this would not be charged as a crime, how do you as lawmakers allow it to be charged as a high crime? Because the Constitution allows for removal for high crimes and misdemeanors, and of course treason and bribery. So how can this be a high crime if all these prosecutors said there's no crime alleged that can be prosecuted? Sounds familiar to what's going on now. Secondly, the Democrats have alleged that Trump needs to be removed or impeached because he asserted privileges and did not turn certain things over. Well, back in '98, they said, I've heard the majority state that a president should not be above the law, and yet this proposed article would place him below the law that gives every American the right to assert legally accepted privileges without fearing being thrown out of his job. So they clearly felt different in 1998. And remember these four law professors and these experts that came and testified against Trump on how this solemn process, it's sad, but it just must be done. He must be removed, and that's their legal opinion. Well, as you can guess, they had a different opinion of removing a president back in 1998, and I'm sure it had nothing to do with the fact that it was a Democrat president. So we had 400 historians take the time to provide letters to the Judiciary Committee, and their thoughts at that time were that the theory of impeachment and the articles against Bill Clinton are just unprecedented in our nation's history, and that they're extremely ominous for the future of our political institutions, and that if carried forward, they warned, they'll leave the presidency permanently disfigured and diminished, and at the mercy as never before at the caprices of Congress. So really the nation's historians, who probably were college professors, I'm guessing, and it probably had nothing to do with their political bias, their prejudices. 400 of them came forward to support President Clinton and warn that this has never happened before, and that if it happened, it would be ominous for our country's future. I wonder how many historians had written letters for President Trump. I wonder how many of those same historians who are alive have changed their mind over the years. I'm sure politics has nothing to do with it. I'm sure they love their country more than they hate Donald Trump. We had these four law professors come and testify, one of whom was from my law school. Well, they had, how many do you think Bill Clinton had testifying against him? I don't know of any, but he had 200 in his favor. 200 that thought, oh, you can't remove a president for this. 200 law professors at that time. And several of them are quoted by the Democrats in their closing argument. Professor Schlesinger said, "Lowering the bar for impeachment creates a novel, revolution theory of impeachment, which would send us on an adventure with ominous implications for the separation of powers that the Constitution established as the basis of our political order. It would permanently weaken the presidency. Professor Jack Rakove said, impeachment is a remedy to be deployed only in unequivocal cases where the insult to the constitutional system is grave. It would have to be a high degree of consensus on both sides of the aisle in Congress and in both houses to proceed. No, we couldn't do it. It's like a wall protecting the fort of the Constitution's separation of powers. The crack you put in the wall today becomes the gash tomorrow, which ultimately leads to the wall crumbling down. It's that serious. It's so serious that the wall was never even approached when President Lincoln suspended the writ of habeas corpus, nor when President Roosevelt misled the public about the involvement of the Lend-Lease program, nor when President Reagan misled the country and Congress about involvement with Iran-Contra. And then we could add, nor was it invoked by the Republicans when Obama did all sorts of things and Hillary did all sorts of things, including the whole Benghazi debacle where they lied directly to the American people. No, none of that took place. One of the professors that Democrats cited in 1998 was Michael Gerhardt, Professor Michael Gerhardt, from my alma mater, the University of North Carolina at Chapel Hill. So do we listen to his testimony of 2019 where he has to just stand up for the Constitution and demand that this president be removed? Or do we look at his testimony in 1998 when there was a Democrat president who agreed with his political bias? At that time, he said that impeachment, quote, had to be of great or dangerous, causing some serious injury to the republic. The framers emphasized that the ultimate purpose of impeachment was not to punish, but to protect and preserve the public trust. So clearly, Professor Gerhardt had no problem as far as public trust goes with allegations that a president had committed perjury, lied under oath, or asked or tried to influence other people to do it. But now Donald Trump, I'm not sure what he's alleged to have done, but it's just a grave. I mean, shouldn't your country or your profession, your respect for the Constitution, should it be the same regardless of whether you're talking about a Democrat, a Republican, or an independent? Shouldn't it just be the same? Professor William Van Alstyne, the special counsel's report as declared are crimes of such a low order that it would unduly flatter the president by submitting him to a trial in the Senate. I would not bother to do it. Professor John Lavovitz, he examined the history and how of impeachment and how it applied to Watergate and concluded with words that seem if they were written for today's events, and he's talking about 98, but we could be talking about 2019, quote, there were undesirable consequences if the House voted impeachment on the basis of one-sided or incomplete information or insufficiently persuasive evidence, subjecting the Senate, the President, and the nation to the uncertainty and potential divisiveness of a presidential impeachment trial is not a step to be taken lightly. While the formal consequences of an ill-advised impeachment would merely be an acquittal after trial, the political ramifications could be much more severe. So they argued in 98 that don't destroy the country over a one-sided political impeachment. Why do they not have the same views here in 2019? It changes. It changes when you have a president who puts kids in cages. Yeah. Let's see. Lastly, they brought up Watergate in 98. They said Watergate was different than what's alleged against Clinton because Watergate was a congressional event in which both sides could identify as serious and substantial enough to call for truly bipartisan action, and that wasn't the case here. It was mostly down party lines, and that was true. And that sounds familiar to 2019. And last but not least, the last expert that they referenced in their argument regarding Bill Clinton was the favorite of the left, Alexander Hamilton, really the only founding father that they don't hate his guts. Alexander Hamilton, he said that it will seldom fail to agitate the passions of the whole community and to divide it into parties more or less friendly or inimical to the accused. Hey, sounds like today. Sounds like the whole country being divided between the people who voted for Donald Trump and the people who voted against him and or are trying to remove him from power. Sounds just like today. And he continued, in many cases, it will connect itself with the pre-existing factions. And in such cases, there will always be the danger that the decision will be regulated more by the comparative strength of the parties than by real demonstrations of innocence and guilt. Well, that's exactly the way it's turned out. So we know that the trial did take place. It ended with Clinton being acquitted. The trial, was it a year-long debacle? Were people testifying? Was it a circus-like atmosphere? No. The prosecutors, the Republicans who were prosecuting and presenting the evidence, they got 3 days to do it. No live witness testimony. They were just reviewing the evidence and discussing it. After they finished, then Bill Clinton's lawyers, the Democrat lawyers, got 3 days to discuss and present their arguments. So 6 days total was the trial. Then the Senate went into closed deliberations, so this wasn't something that was broadcasted on TV. The public, I'm sure even if we did that today, we'd have leaks, but this is something that was done in private. Then they came out into open session and then voted, and they did a roll call vote. And because there were some Republicans who voted for not guilty, Clinton was not removed. It takes 2/3 of the Senate, whereas it just takes a majority of the House to impeach. 2/3, as per the Constitution, 2/3 of the senators, so bipartisan relatively, have to vote to remove. One of the articles, the one of the Article 2, where it said that he tried to influence testimony, tried to get other people to commit perjury, that went pretty much 50-50. I think it was exactly 50-50. And a couple Republicans voted not guilty, and there were only 45 Democrats in the Senate at that time. So, 5 Republicans voted not guilty on that one. Article 1, they had a little more vote for guilty. That was still not anywhere near enough. That was all 45 Democrat senators voted not guilty, 45 Republicans voted guilty, and 10 Republicans voted not guilty. So you got another 5 Republicans on Article 1. So he was not convicted. And probably many people were right that it should only be used where everyone can agree that it should be used. And that's kind of how the way it looked at, till now. After Clinton was acquitted, he still then lost his Arkansas law license for 5 years and paid a $25,000 fine to close the investigation into him committing perjury. And he paid $850,000 to Paula Jones to settle the civil lawsuit where she alleged that he raped her. So, again, we really don't have any facts like that here with Donald Trump. I'm not sure exactly what the facts are, but everything that I read to you was the position of the chief counsel of the Democrats in 1998. And I ask you, why should positions on the Constitution ever change, whether you're talking about a Republican or a Democrat president or a Libertarian president? Why should your positions on the Constitution ever change? Should we be a fair-weathered friend with the Constitution? No. So those are the facts, for you millennials who really didn't know much about the 1998 impeachment.